Alright, so today we'll be going through top 5 changes to the LDS Temple Endowment. The document I'll be using here is one that I compiled together, all the transcripts comparing the 1990 changes, 2019, and 2023 changes. And it's available in the link in the description. Alright, so first one is the penalties. So penalties were in the pre-1990 and they were taken out in 1990. So we'll use the first token of the Aaronic priesthood section here as an example. So, here describing the sacred nature, these are the names and signs that you need to get through back into heaven. And then, so this is the point where everybody stands up and gets the first token of the Aaronic priesthood, the handshake. Everybody gets the token. The name of the new token is your new name in the temple. And then they tell you about the sign. So that's the right arm to the square, palm in front. So then what you would have done was done the execution of the penalty. So the narrator describes it as, the execution of the penalty is represented by placing the thumb under the left ear, the palm of the hand down, and by drawing the thumb quickly across the throat to the right ear and dropping the hand to the side. So then everyone repeats the oath like this. So then you say, I, new name, covenant before God and angels and these witnesses that I will never reveal the first token of the Aaronic priesthood with its accompanying name, sign, and penalty. Rather than do so, and then this is when the patron would, as you're saying these next words, that's when you would bring your thumb across your throat. Rather than do so, I would suffer my life to be taken. And then that would be it. So, pretty interesting. So now let's jump to what this section looks like currently. Alright, so go to 2023, first token of the Aaronic priesthood. So then when everyone makes their oath, they just say, I, new name, covenant before God, angels, and these witnesses that I will never reveal the first token of the Aaronic priesthood with its accompanying name and sign. So it doesn't have the penalty in there anymore. Yeah, so that's number one. Alright, so next one is, there was an entire character that was removed in the pre-1990. So we'll go pre-1990 to post-1990 comparison, Lucifer's preacher. So this is essentially at the point where, Adam they've been expelled from the garden. Adam's praying at his little altar that he made, and then Lucifer shows up pretending to be the god of the world. So during that scene, there's actually another character that used to be there, and so we'll just read some of this because it's kind of funny. So Lucifer's, good morning, sir. Good morning, a fine congregation. Yes, they are very good people. They are concerned about religion. Are you a preacher? I am. I have been to college and received training for the have you been to college and received training to the ministry? Preacher, certainly. A man cannot preach unless he has been trained for the ministry. Lucifer, do you preach the Orthodox religion? Yes, that is what I preach. If you will preach your Orthodox religion to these people and convert them, I will pay you well. I will do my best. So it's basically making explicit that the professional preachers were paid off and basically working with the devil. to try to lead people astray. So kind of goes along with, in the first vision where all their creeds are an abomination, or in the Book of Mormon where he's talking about the great and abominable church. So he shows up in one other place, yeah, basically trying to try to convince Adam and Eve to follow his religion. Another interesting line here. So you'll probably remember this line. Now is the great day of my power. But then right after that, the preacher asks, shall we ever have any apostles or prophets? Lucifer. No. However, there may be some who will profess revelation or apostleship. If so, just test them by asking that they perform a great miracle, such as cutting off an arm or some other member of the body and restoring it, so that the people may know that they have come with power. I still don't really understand what the point of this is. Maybe it's trying to make people who are asking for a sign kind of look bad, but yeah. So preacher got the axe. Yeah, there's no trace of him whatsoever post 1990. Okay, so number 3, law of the husband. So this one has a bit of a saga to it, because there's changes. This is one of the areas that's been changed almost every time over the 4 different changes. And so it's basically connected with the law of obedience. And so in the pre-1990 endowment, Elohim made this explicit statement, basically saying that Eve is going to be punished in a different way, because she was the one that gave the fruit to Adam. So he says, Eve, because thou hast hearkened to the voice of Satan, and hast partaken of the forbidden fruit, and given it to Adam, I will greatly multiply thy sorrow and thy conception. In sorrow thou shalt bring forth children. Nevertheless thou mayst be preserved in childbearing. Thy desire shall be to thy husband, and he shall rule over thee in righteousness. So they took that part out, but I think that's kind of the ancient people's way of explaining why childbirth was such a physically demanding and dangerous thing, is that, well, God must be punishing the woman somehow for making it that way. But yeah, then this he shall rule over thee in righteousness plays into this law of obedience, where Eve actually covenants to obey your law. So she's talking to Adam. Adam, I now covenant to obey your law as you obey the Father, as you obey our Father. So, insomuch if Eve was the first to eat of the forbidden fruit, if she will covenant from this time forth, she will obey your law in the Lord. And that was just changed to the law of the Lord. And will hearken unto your counsel as you hearken unto mine. So here Eve is actually covenanting to obey the law of her husband. So when when they make the actual patrons do this, this is the words that the women would have to say. You and each of you solemnly covenant and promise before God, angels, and these witnesses at this altar, that you will each observe and keep the law of your husband, and abide by his counsel in righteousness. They change that to, you will each obey the law of the Lord, and hearken to the counsel of your husbands, as he hearkens unto the counsel of the Father. So they softened it a bit by taking out the explicit, the law of your husband, but it still had this hearken unto your husband. you know. So, you can only imagine for the women being forced to covenant to obey the law of their husbands and then bowing their heads and saying yes. Must have been pretty strange back then. So now let's jump to what that looks like today. So all throughout all the different changes, get down to the law of obedience. So this has been revamped yet again to basically make it gender neutral now. So there's no hearken unto your husband, any of that. So it reads, Adam, Eve, insomuch as you have eaten of the forbidden fruit, if you will covenant that from this time forth you will keep the law of obedience, we will give unto you the law of sacrifice. So it's not making any mention that there's any difference between the two. So Adam, Eve, we will now put you under a covenant to obey the law of obedience, which is to obey my commandments. And so this is now what each person bows their head to. Each of you solemnly covenant and promise before God, angels, and these witnesses that you will keep the law of obedience as it has been explained to you. So, they like to say that the covenants didn't change, but if you change what the women are promising, they're just promising something different. Yeah, like if the words of the contract change, you can't really say that the contract didn't change. You could argue it may have the same intent, but to say that it didn't change would be incorrect. Okay, number 4. My pick is going to be Pale So this is pre-1990. This is the Adamic, supposedly Adamic language for saying, "Oh God, hear the words of my mouth." And so this is what you would say for I think it's the second token of the Melchizedek priesthood. Yeah. So this is where you'd raise your hands above your head and say Pale as you're bringing your hands down. And then still would be repeated 3 times. And then this is what they would actually say in the prayer circle. So this has connections with Joseph Smith's Pure Adamic Language project. So you may recognize Ale, like his code name in the United Firm was Baruch Ale. So those were in the Revelations for a while. Nobody really knows, or there's no identifiable language known as the pure language, or this Pale Ale doesn't really match any Hebrew or anything, but some people have speculated that Ale means God. So just one of those fascinating artifacts of Joseph Smith's language translation projects. Alright, so number 5 is loud laughter. So this was part of the law of the gospel, and so you used to be put under covenant, so to do a couple things here. So the way it was worded was, we are required to give unto you the law of the gospel, which is the higher law taught by Jesus Christ, as contained in the Holy Scriptures. To give unto you also a charge to avoid all light-mindedness, loud laughter, evil speaking of the Lord's anointed, the taking of the name of God in vain, and every other unholy and impure practice, and to cause you to receive these by covenant. Okay, so you did actually covenant to avoid loud laughter and these other things. So now, if we skip to 2023, see, Law of the Gospel. So here now in 2023, they've added a bit more explanation for what the law of the gospel actually is. So just the basics: faith, repentance, baptism, Holy Ghost, endure to the end. But then here in these extra kind of things that you promise, they added love your God, love your neighbor, avoid light-mindedness, scratch the loud laughter, add in unworthy thoughts and actions. But these are still received by covenant. So, when saying these, it's a bit ambiguous, but seems to imply everything that was just said. So, the covenant here did actually change. So those are my top 5 picks for the changes from 1990 to 2023. Let me know what your favorites are down below, and thanks for watching.